Welcome to my March wrap up. So I decided to split my wrap up into parts this month. So it's actually the 11th of March. And I wanted to share with you the books that I've read up until this point, and then later on in the video I will share with you the books that I will continue to pick up in the month of March. But I guess let's just get started with the book that you will probably care the least about, but I actually really liked it and I think it's an important topic to share about. And that book is Woman Code: Perfect Your Cycle, Amplify Your Fertility, Supercharge Your Sex Drive, and Become a Power Source by Alisa Vitti. So this obviously is about women's health. I originally picked this book up because I was really interested in hormones and like hormone imbalances in the body. I also just think as a woman it's really important to know about your body and like what goes on in your body and how it can not only affect your physical health, but it can also affect your mood as well. She goes into PCOS a lot in this book, and she kind of touches on topics that kind of can help any woman out there, whether you're trying to have kids, you have no interest in having kids anytime soon. I feel like she makes this book really accessible. And I know a lot of people like aren't interested in women's health, but I just thought it was interesting, and this book totally catapulted me into clean eating. So I've been doing a better job of like watching what I eat and like reducing my sugar intake, which is one of the things that she says in the book, and then, you know, eating fruits and veggies and all that kind of stuff. I loved this book a lot. I gave it probably, I don't know, like a 4.5 stars. I thought it was so interesting. I feel like it doesn't have like good wrapping, you know what I mean? Like I feel like the substance of this book is a lot better than how this book actually appears if you were to see it on the shelf. But she does such a great job of like breaking things down for you. Let me give you kind of an example of what I'm talking about. So what I love about this book so much is that she doesn't just like tell you what to do, but she also like gives you tools on how to actually do it, which I found really helpful. So for example, when she's talking about like a meal plan, she'll actually give you an ingredient list that you can take to the store and use to go shopping. And then she'll actually list out recipes like that are healthy recipes that you can actually use. So this obviously isn't a cookbook, but I like how when she talks about clean eating, she actually gives you examples of what that looks like. And then even in the back of the book, she has different categories of things, and she will like list out her favorite brands for certain types of food or vitamins or whatever it is. And it just made this book really interesting. I have not returned this from the library yet because I want to go through it a little bit more so I can like write down notes of like other brands and types of food that she recommends. But I just think it's like kind of empowering to know like that I have more control over my body than I thought that I did, and I really enjoyed my time reading this book. So the next book that I finished was actually an audiobook, and that's Honey Girl by Morgan Rogers. So I kind of have like mixed opinions about this book, but let me just get into like briefly what the book is about. So it's about this girl named Grace who's 28 years old, and she just gets her PhD in astronomy. But the book opens up with the fact that she goes to Vegas and then she drunkenly gets married to this woman that she doesn't know. And so the book was really talking about her experience struggling to get a job in the astronomy field, or just like not knowing what she wants to do because she gets a lot of pressure from her dad because he was an ex-military person, or he's in the military, and he puts a lot of pressure on her to always excel and be the best. And she's facing a lot of prejudice in the field of astronomy because she is biracial. So as Grace is struggling to figure out what she wants to do with her career, she wants to meet the person that she married in Vegas. So there is a part of the book that takes place where she goes to New York to visit Yuki, who is the woman that she married. So she wants to basically meet her wife. So I don't know, like I have mixed opinions about this book because like there were things about this book that I liked and things about this book that I didn't like. So I guess we'll start off with the positive, right? What I did like about the book is that there was a lot of representation, which I think is so great. So the main character, as I said, is biracial, and there's many other characters as well that come from very different cultures and backgrounds. And it's a sapphic romance, so it's female, And I thought that was really interesting just to kind of get a different type of story. I also really liked, I thought it was really relatable, at least for me, to hear about someone who like went through schooling and like gets a PhD and is struggling to get a job, and kind of just like learning about like the experiences that she was going through and how that was really hurting her mindset and how she was getting really down on herself. And I thought that was touched on really well. I also liked towards the end of the book, this is not spoilery, but she, you know, is maybe talking to a therapist, which obviously I really like, representation of mental health in books, and they talk about that too, which I think is really important as well. And yeah, so like there was definitely things in the book that it had going for it. Obviously part of the book was set in New York, which I liked. But the things that I didn't like about the book is that it was definitely a contemporary, and I honestly was a little bit bored with it. I just like wasn't super compelled with the story. It kind of, I don't know, like, I mean, it just kind of was like a slice of life in a way, and, you know, talking about her and her friends and all that. I did like when they went into their relationship with her and her parents. I also thought it was interesting how her parents were divorced and kind of that dynamic as well. That was interesting. But I just got a little bit bored in the book. Also, the end was actually a little bit disappointing. Like when my audiobook like ended, I was like, I went back and I was like, did I miss something? Like, I actually usually like when books end with kind of leaves you with questions and open answers, and you like don't really know like what actually happened. But in this kind of book, I actually would have liked an epilogue or an afterword or something where it was like, this is what Grace ended up doing or whatever. And it kind of just like, I don't know, it's like we went on this journey with her, and I kind of wanted to see like where she ended up. I didn't feel like I got the closure I needed from the book. I don't know, like, especially with her career, I really wanted to know, like, we saw the process of her, like, graduating from school and her trying to figure out, like, what she wanted to do, and I wish there was more answers and closure to that. I just, like, didn't feel like I got that. So, in all, the book was okay. I mean, I'm not a contemporary person, really, to begin with, so we'll just say that. But I gave it like a 3 out of 5 stars. I thought it was like fairly average. Definitely a good read, but not my most favorite book that I've read in March. So my goal in March is to read books that I actually really like. I DNF'd a book today because this is the month where I'm going to really enjoy the books that I'm reading. That's the goal. And as you know, I'm a huge fan of Lori Gottlieb and Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, and I've been craving a book like that ever since I read it, and it's just like so impossible to find. Yet there was a book that was exactly what I was looking for, hidden on the internet. It came across my attention at one point when I was like researching books, and I was like, this is the next book I'm gonna read, and I absolutely loved it. And that is Good Morning Monster by Katherine Gildner. A therapist shares 5 heroic stories of emotional recovery. So if you're a fan of Maybe You Should Talk to Someone, this is the next book that you have to read. It is so good. I'd say it's a little bit different than Lori's book in various different ways. So she actually splits up the book into 5 different parts. So each person gets their own story. And I wouldn't say it's like a collection of short stories. I'd say that she kind of weaves them together, but they're definitely separated. She also gives less information about herself. She kind of only adds in a little piece of herself when she feels like it's necessary, but her main goal is to share her clients' stories. And what I really love about this book is that she wanted to share their stories because she thinks that her clients are heroes. And I'll get a little bit into the people that she talks about, but the people in this book have gone through some of the most horrific things anyone could ever go through in life. And even though like a lot of them are so down on themselves and like don't think that they're good enough and have all of these like negative thoughts about themselves and what they've been through, like they really are heroes in their own way, that they were able to survive and overcome these tragedies that they faced. And and just like it was such a beautifully written book. I loved it so much. This is exactly what I like in a book, not only obviously the focus on therapy and mental health, but just talking about the journey of these people. Most of these people were in therapy for around 5 years. She would talk about the first session they'd be in, and then would talk about the last time she ever saw them. And let me just give you a brief synopsis of the 5 main clients in her book. So the first one was abandoned in the woods with her 2 siblings, which she had to raise at the age of 8. The next one is the child of a Chinese immigrant. Next was a Native American boy who was kidnapped from his family and forced to go into these schools, which basically tried to eradicate the Native American culture that he had. The next one had a sadistic father, and then the last one was a person that was like in the high society in New York who was raised with a narcissistic mother. So their stories are all completely different. I thought there was a lot of great representation in this book. I thought it was really interesting to learn about the child of Chinese immigrants, and then the Native American man who, his name is Danny. He was my favorite story in the book. I mean, just like what he's been through and like who he is as a person. I loved seeing his journey and also just learning about Native American culture. So I thought that was really, really interesting. I mean, I could rave about this book all day. I loved it so much. I mean, if you love people, if you love hearing like transformative stories that are inspirational and also incredibly interesting, again, these people, like, I don't even want to say it on camera what these people have been through. Some of it is like crazy, like so insane, and you just have to read this book if this sounds interesting to you. But obviously this was a 5 out of 5 stars. It'll probably be going on my top books of 2021, so you'll be seeing this book again. But I absolutely loved this book and my experience reading it. So those are the 3 books that I finished so far. I obviously continuing to read this month, and I will check back in with you when I finish my next book. So I'm just going to update you with the books that I've finished since my last clip. It honestly isn't the end of the month yet. I still have like another week out, but like I just don't think I'm going to finish another book before the end of the month, because I'm not listening to an audiobook right now, and I haven't even started my next physical book, so this might just be the end of my wrap up. But let me just get started with the next book that I finished in the month of March, which is Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man by Emmanuel Acho. So I said this a while ago on my channel, but I was really trying to read more anti-racist books as well as books written by Black authors this year. And so I decided to pick this book up, and I really like this book. I think that Emmanuel Acho covers a lot of different topics when it comes to racism in this country in a very accessible way, and he is just a very compassionate, understanding guy. And basically what he does is that he'll pose a question at the beginning of a chapter, and then throughout the chapter he'll kind of answer that question, which are questions that many Americans have. And I think that this is a really great place to start when it comes to anti-racist literature. Some of the topics that he covers are white privilege, cultural appropriation, and reverse racism. And I just think this is a really great starting place. So my recommendation for this book, if you have never read an anti-racist book and you want to kind of dive into that topic, I would definitely recommend this book as a great start. I think that if you've read a lot of anti-racist literature in the past, this may be a little bit too surface level. I know that there are other books out there that go more in depth on certain topics and give more of a history. He gives more of a broad overview, but overall I thought this book was really effective, and I really liked this book. And because I'm not rating anti-racist literature, I'm not giving this a rating, but I really did enjoy my audiobook experience, especially because the author Emmanuel Acho narrates it, and he's such a great narrator. And if you don't have time to read the book, I would recommend watching his series that he has here on YouTube. So as I've said many times on my channel, one of my favorite books of all time is The Light We Lost by Jill Santopolo, and I promised myself that I will literally read anything by her. So I recently reread her second novel, or adult novel, More Than Words, and then ever since then, which was 2018, I've been waiting for her to come out with a new adult novel, and she finally did, and it is Everything After. So I would say that I have a lot of opinions about this book just because she is one of my favorite authors, which is kind of funny because although I love her writing, I also have a lot of issues with her as well. So let me just get into like the basic plot points, I guess, and then I'll get into the my actual opinion of the book. So this is about Emily, who is a psychologist at NYU. So I know I'm a broken record, but I really like the fact that she's a therapist and she's like seeing patients who are college students at NYU, and she's married to a doctor, and they, you know, have a wonderful life. And then all of a sudden she hears a song on the radio, and it's a song about a woman, and that woman is her because it is her lost love from college. So just as a note, this book talks a lot about miscarriages, which I know can be a very triggering topic to people, but it's also a way that if you have gone through something like that, or you know someone who has, I think that it also can be a very relatable text, as she really goes into the grief that comes with miscarriages. So this was a love triangle. I mean, literally all three of her books are love triangles, which I guess I kind of assumed that was gonna happen just because I guess that's just what she likes to write about. But I really liked this book, even though I had issues with it. It's hard to explain. Like, there was issues I had with the plot of this book, but I just love her writing. Her books are set in New York City, obviously, and I just think it's really interesting. She talks a lot about choice. Like, do you pick the life that you have now, or do you pick, you know, that life that you always imagined, or maybe a past life that you used to have? And I thought the end was like kind of like not realistic. I just feel like the main character's decision would bother the people around her more than it actually did. But again, maybe they were cool with it. Maybe there's people out there that would be cool with what she decided to do, but I don't know. Like, I would be kind of annoyed if I was in their situation. But yeah, I ended up really liking the book. It was definitely not as dramatic as The Light We Lost. I don't think anything will be as dramatic as that. I probably liked it better than More Than Words for some reason. I thought this book was more interesting, but I just love Jill Santopolo's writing, and I totally get for people like why they wouldn't like her books or relate to her novels, but I just really like them. And if you're looking for a contemporary romance that just hit the shelves, I mean, I like this book, and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. So the next book that I listened to on audio was The Defining Decade by Meg Jay, who is a clinical psychologist. I'm not gonna lie, I absolutely loved this book so much, and I think everyone who's in their 20s and is confused on what they're doing, whether it's with their love life or their career, or if they feel lost and not sure, I mean, this book was so relatable to me, and exactly the book that I needed at the time that I read it. So this book basically talks about why 20 is not the new 30. So she talks a lot about this mentality that, oh, your 20s are supposed to be for fun and you just like hang out, and then, you know, once you turn 30, then things start to get real. And then you hit 30 and you never built up anything in your 20s, and then you realize that life is a lot harder because you weren't preparing for the things that you wanted in life. So she really goes into, you know, what can you do in your 20s now to set your life up for success? And she talks about how your 20s is the time of your life where you're able to create the life that you want, or just start to create the life that you want, and, you know, set your goals and get started working on your goals. And I just thought this book was so well written for so many different ways, just because I really liked how she went through all of the things that people in their 20s think about, which is like their love life, whether they want to have kids or not, their career, and, you know, making sure they're on the right career path. But she does it in a really relatable way. So I really liked how she would use kind of like a case study of a previous client that she'd had. She would walk through what this client's personality was like what led them to where they are today, where they want to go, and kind of walk through some of the mindset or negative mindset pieces that they had that she thinks that they should change in order to be, you know, have the success that they want in life. And I really liked how she did it in a case study way, where we got to know the characters, or not the characters, the people, and be able to really relate to them. I just think this was a really good book for me. I honestly wish I read it a couple of years ago, but just because I feel like, especially now in your 20s, there's kind of like this wanderlust mentality of like, well, everyone's having fun, or, you know, why can't they just travel and not work right now? And it really just reminded me of like why it's so important to work hard when I'm young to get me to where I want to be later. And I know that I've struggled a lot with certain things in my 20s, specifically like with my career and other things, and it's so important to recognize that hard work does pay off and it gets me on the right track. And I used to have this mentality that, you know, I had all these like dreams and goals that I want to achieve, and I kind of expected that I would get them today instead of realizing that I have to put the work in and put my dues in. I just feel like there were certain things that I thought in my 20s that were kind of, or I am still am in my 20s, but I guess my early 20s, where I was kind of naive about what this decade of my life actually is. And I feel like she kind of helps you move through that and kind of shift your mindset around like what's possible, but then also like gets you excited for what's to come in life. So I love this book so much. I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, I can't recommend this book enough to people in their 20s who are struggling or confused or don't know what to do or don't know their next step. This is the book for you. I absolutely loved it, and it was a clear 5 out of 5 stars and probably one of my new favorite books of the year. So the next book that I finished, and probably the last book that I'll finish in the month of March, is Hold Me Tight, 7 Conversations for a Lifetime of Love by Dr. Sue Johnson, who, yes, did we guess it, is a therapist. When I like look back to this month, I mean, I think that either half or more than half the books that I read this month were written by therapists, but that's okay. We're just gonna move past that. And this book is really similar to the book that I read last month, When Men Are From Mars or Women Are From Venus. It was kind of like the same type of book, just not written as gendered as that one is. And she is basically talking about how to recreate an emotional attachment to your partner through emotionally focused therapy, which is something that I believe that she developed. So this is what I'm going to say about this book. Again, this book is not targeted for me. I thought that this could be like a really great way for me to learn about like creating a healthy relationship and love and all that stuff, which honestly I did gain some information from it. This book, again, is for the people that have been married for 20 years and resent their partner and they bicker a lot and all that kind of stuff, which is really not where I am in my life right now. So I did learn from it, but like I really didn't like how this book was written, and it was written the same exact way as When Men Are From Mars and Women Are From Venus, which they also like came out, or no, I think that book is older, but they came out like, you know, a while ago, so these are a little bit older of books. But so unlike the last book I just talked about, where she gave like a case study where you kind of really got into the mindset of this person and you followed along their journey throughout the whole chapter, she would switch from couple to couple to couple to like literally 5,000 times within each chapter, and it was like just like 1 or 2 pages, and it would happen so much, and I was like, I don't care about any of these people because I don't know anything about them. They're just like names on a page, and I just like don't like when it's written like a very bland and vanilla way. Like if you're gonna give me a case study or an example of what you're talking about, give me like one and then just dive into it instead of giving me like 5,000 examples. I ended up giving this book a 3 out of 5 stars because I do think that this book can be useful for couples that have grown apart over time, generally through marriage if they've been together for a long time, and want to, you know, regain a healthy attachment. It's not written for people that aren't married. Doesn't hurt to read it if you're not married. So I'm just gonna give this book a 3 out of 5 stars, and I think I'm just gonna take a break from, you know, psychology therapy books, even though I do like them. Like most of the ones I read this month I loved, and then like this one like was fine. Again, if it was written for me when I need it, I probably would have liked it better. It just like wasn't quite what I wanted. Also, this shirt has like a lot of holes in it, by the way. It's supposed to be like that, so I know it looks weird when there's just like one. But anyway, those are the books that I read in March. I'm actually probably gonna start another one today, but the way this month is going, I just like don't think I'm gonna finish it before the end of the month, so I might just say goodbye now. So thank you for getting all the way until the end of the video. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next one.